Imagine you wake up one morning and the ruler you've used your whole life has quietly gotten shorter. Everything you've ever measured is now wrong. Your savings, your salary, your future. That ruler is the dollar, and it's shrinking. Not dramatically, not with sirens, but quietly, steadily, in ways most people don't notice until it's too late. What we're watching right now in the gold market, in currency markets, in the slow drift away from American treasuries, is one of the most significant monetary shifts in a generation. Today, we're talking about what money actually is, how our current system was built, why it's starting to crack, and what comes next. Understanding this is the difference between being caught off guard and being prepared. Let's go back to the beginning. Before 1971, money meant something physical. You could walk into a bank with paper currency and walk out with gold. The paper was just a receipt. The gold was the real thing. That was the deal. That was hard money. But in 1971, that deal ended. America was running out of gold, and President Nixon cut the link between the dollar and gold entirely. The dollar was backed by trust, by military power, and by the fact that if you wanted to buy oil, you needed dollars. This created the petrodollar system. Every country needed dollars to trade energy, so they all held dollars in reserve. Demand for the dollar stayed permanently high, and America could print, spend, and borrow more than any nation in history. It was the greatest financial arrangement ever constructed. For America, but this arrangement had a hidden cost. To keep the dollar strong, American factories became less competitive. Jobs moved overseas. For decades, it felt fine because asset prices kept rising. Your house, your 401k, everything looked great on paper. But if you worked for a living, the math was different. In the late 1960s, a week's work at minimum wage bought you about 1.5 ounces of gold. Today, that same week of work buys you just a fraction of 1 ounce. The paycheck got bigger, but the purchasing power got smaller. The ruler shrank. Now, here's where we are today. The world is changing its mind about the dollar. Central banks are quietly buying gold at the fastest rate in decades, diversifying away from only holding American debt. Countries like China have built entire payment systems that bypass American banks completely. These aren't small moves. They are long-term infrastructure decisions. At the same time, the United States is carrying over $36 trillion in national debt. The interest payments alone now exceed what America spends on its military. Something has to change. Here's where it gets interesting. A weaker dollar isn't necessarily a catastrophe. It depends on which version of America you're rooting for. There are really two American economies. The first is financialized America, built on a strong dollar, cheap imports, and rising stock prices. The second is productive America, the one that builds things. A strong dollar actually hurts this version, making American labor more expensive. So when you see pressure to weaken the dollar, it could be a deliberate attempt to make American production competitive again. This transition is painful and volatile, which is exactly what we're seeing. Gold has repriced dramatically. Silver is moving. These are signals. The market is pricing in a world where the dollar is just one important currency among several, not the unchallenged center of everything. This is what a shift in the monetary order looks like from the inside. It looks like gold going up while your savings account earns 2%. When a currency weakens, people who hold real assets, property, commodities, productive businesses tend to see their value rise. Their wealth is in things, not the paper that measures them. People who rely on wages and cash savings feel the squeeze most. Everything just gets more expensive. So, where does this go? We're moving from a unipolar dollar world toward a more distributed system with gold, regional currencies, and alternative payment systems playing a larger role. This doesn't mean the dollar disappears. It will remain enormously important. But its share of the global reserve pie is shrinking, and the rate of that shrinkage is accelerating. This is the hinge point that shows up every few generations in history books. The smart move is to understand it. The transition favors people who own real things over people who simply hold the paper that measures them. The ruler is getting shorter. The question is whether your assets are priced in the ruler or in the things the ruler used to measure. That's the bet being made right now in every central bank and every gold vault on Earth. And now you know why. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more. There's a lot more to uncover.